Hey, welcome to Genre Exposure, a film podcast. Join us as we explore the wide world of cinema, broadening our horizons one movie at a time. I'm one of your hosts, Dustin, and as usual, I am here with Jason.
Hey, everyone.
How you doing, man?
I'm doing good. How are you?
It's been a rough week, but I'm glad to be here talking about movies. And you know, I've noticed that since Michael has left us, my intro, I can't really do that bombastic, what's up, guys? How you doing?
No, you can still do that, because the listeners are the guys.
True, I guess, yeah. Maybe.
Just think of them.
Thinking about doing this.
Thinking of all of our beautiful listeners.
This smooth core, I'm just like, how you doing, man?
That works too.
We'll see. Today, we're continuing our freestyle start of the year, and you're getting that double shot of listener episodes. And this is the first one. We've got History of the Occult from 2020, suggested by Urban Groucho. Thank you, man. We love you. What was it? Come True last year was the one he pitched.
Yeah, great movie.
So good. Mm-hmm. And we really wanted to cover this one, but there was a hang-up, and we're going to talk about that today, because I charted out all the notes of how this happened.
Oh, wow.
Fell into a bit of a licensing limbo in the U.S., so
okay,
that'll be fun. But first, we're going to talk about what we've been watching, and I have a shout-out.
Ooh, what's the shout-out?
So we are now third year going strong, no sponsorships, but we're still shilling for Shudder, and I got to shill for him again, because when you get this episode, it will have already been time that this happened. I think on the 5th of this month, Possession, Zulawski's Possession, joined the Shudder catalog.
Classic movie. I
made a Twitter post about it. If you follow our page, amazing film. We all love it here. You need to see it if you have never seen it. Mm-hmm. So if you've ever thought about Shudder, you've been on the fence about Shudder, now is the time to go to see this one movie. And then there's endless of content,
tons more.
So I think in the tweet I mentioned a little bit, but like we always talk about, the podcast kind of started from this movie club, and incidentally, the start of the movie club was that film. That was the one we launched out on. And
it was the only one that, at the time, the members of the then movie club, is the only one we all really agreed upon was like a fucking classic.
Yeah, it was funny because we all loved it. We all each had a different interpretation. And then when we talked about it, it was like none of us agreed, but we also were all compelled by the other person's thoughts.
Yeah.
And so, really, eventually, the formulation of this podcast is like chasing that dragon to find more movies that make me feel that way, and
it's a very unique film
to get you talking about it. So yes,
do seek it out.
Do seek it out. I guess maybe I'll start with what I've been watching, because
what'd you watch?
I finally had a dud. I haven't had a dud in a while, so I've got that Shawscope box set staring me down. I'm ready to start it. But I've been on a spree of like filling in some holes, you know. I checked out the Silent Night, Deadly Night stuff, and one of the Amityville films got a Blu-ray release that never had one before.
Well, you're not surprised that an Amityville film is a dud, are you?
Well, so 1990, The Amityville Curse. I think technically this is the 5th film in the franchise.
Is this an official one, or does it even matter at this point in the timeline?
I think technically it's official, but also it's one of those ones like it falls between the gaps. It might have to do with a releasing thing, but one of the Vinegar Syndrome partner labels put this out, and I thought, you know, I've got the Scream Factory 1-3 box. I've got the amazing Vinegar Syndrome later sequel box with all the like haunted object ones. So you know me, I'm a collector. I see that spot and it's empty, and I gotta get that last film to put in there, right?
Right.
So this one is it's based on a novel by Hans Holzer, the like supernatural paranormal investigator guy. Where to begin? So it's kind of about Amityville, but it's kind of not, and it's weird because they have a house, and it kind of looks like the Amityville house, but it's obviously not the house. And it's like there's this couple, and they're gonna buy a house to flip, and it's a weird thing where it's like they're driving to the house they're gonna talk about. And then the main chick, the wife, is kind of psychic, and she has a feeling about a house, and they stop there, and it's all ran down. And so they buy it, and they're going to bring their friends in and flip it for cheap and sell it and make a bunch of money for everyone.
Okay.
It's like the worst episode of like one of those house hunter kind of things ever. And then it goes through all the paces of a usual Amityville film of like the house being haunted and weird stuff happening and da-da.
Right, I've seen them all before.
And you don't know, because it's like it suggests at times that this isn't the Amityville house.
It's a Amityville house. But then like when they first roll up there, like all their friends to check it out, one of them is like, "Oh, so this is Amityville."
And I'm like, are you...
Maybe there are several like possessed evil houses in Amityville. Maybe that's the problem.
So I almost thought there was a kernel of a good idea here where they were kind of suggesting that maybe there was just like an evil that like emanated from the Amityville house and that has like pervaded the town.
Okay.
And infected a lot of stuff.
Houses,
but
sure.
They really don't go into that too much, and they just suggest it for a second, and then it's just a very vague, very boring, by the numbers Amityville sequel. They kind of bring in some of the like DeFeo stuff too, like there's the ghosts of them that they see, and where the main chick is like psychic a little bit and has visions and stuff, and it's just really boring, really undercooked. The best part is actually the intro, which is just like this short, very terse thing of like a really cool priest with like this deep, bassy voice, and there's some weird stuff going on, and they're worried about something, and then he goes to hear a confession, and there's a mysterious person on the other side of the booth, and then he just whips out a shotgun and blows him away.
Nice.
And it's funny because like I guess they didn't consider this one of the cursed object ones, but it kind of is, because like the whole reason the main house is haunted is because they take that confession booth that he died in and like stash it in the basement. Like I think the house originally was supposed to be like a rectory or something, maybe.
Okay.
That's why they store it there. But yeah, I don't know.
That sounds like a stretch, but whatever.
Watch it if you want to see them all. It's not the most painful sequel, so I guess it's got that going for it. So.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah, Amityville Curse.
After that glowing endorsement.
What did you see, sir?
I saw something interesting. Not the sort of thing I usually watch, or at least not what I talk about here, but it's called My Ode School. It came out in 2022. I saw it on the list of like some of the best films of 2022, or at least some of the most underrated. And it is Scottish. And the synopsis is, in 1993, a 16-year-old Brandon Lee enrolled at Bearsden Academy, a secondary school in the well-to-do suburb of Glasgow, Scotland. What followed over the next 2 years became the stuff of legend.
Okay.
And to say too much about the plot would give too much away. But it's all a true story, and they have a lot of the now grown-up kids who went to the school interviewed, and it's really fun to watch them because some of them are interviewed in groups, and you can tell there's still camaraderie amongst them.
Yeah.
Like they all still live in the same town, they still know each other, so there's like a lot of joking around and stuff. There's like real film footage shown, and then a lot of it's done in like an animation style. There's a lot of twists and turns, but in Alan Cumming, okay, so the guy who was actually about,
Right.
he did not want to appear on camera, but he did audio recordings for it, audio interview. So they got Alan Cumming to come in, and he like talks over it, like, you know, what's the word I'm looking for? He's like
Dubs in.
yeah, like he's miming along to the audio track. He does a really good good job of it too. He really sells it.
Cool.
I'd say anything too much about it would be to give too much away, but it's not. It's kind of a fun watch because there's nothing really nefarious going on. You know, it's because you hear about things that happen at schools that this isn't going to go well.
Right.
But this is actually kind of not really heartwarming because it's also kind of sad, but it's not icky. Let me put it that way. So
Okay.
if you're turned off by like those violent or lurid true crime type documentaries, this is something that's a bit more fun. So I would suggest checking out if you like real life stories.
Where can we get at it?
I saw this one on Prime. I think I had to rent it.
Oh. Well, Michael's out.
I know Michael won't watch it because it's not for free. And he can't have that. Go to justwatch.com. You'll find out where to watch it.
Never trust justwatch.com. What are you talking about?
This is true.
Well, that's interesting. I'm wondering if I've stepped into a parallel dimension where you're suggesting a heartwarming...
That is a little strange, isn't it?
Yeah. May have something to do with our film today.
Oh, no. Perhaps we live in an alternate reality. Oh, it's actually on Hulu.
Oh.
So you can watch it on Hulu.
So first go to Prime, try to rent it, realize you can't. Go back out, go to Hulu.
Yeah. Follow those steps exactly.
That's the only way it shows up.
But yes, speaking of alternate dimensions and things like that, that does take us to our movie of the day.
Quite. right, so today we are talking about History of the Occult from 2020. From Argentina, yeah?
Yep.
I'll hit you with the synopsis real quick. During the last broadcast of 60 Minutes Before Midnight, the most watched journalistic program on television, Adrian Marcado could expose a conspiracy and link the government to an obscure secret society.
And that name alone, Adrian Marcado, may perk some ears out there if anyone's a big fan of Rosemary's Baby.
Yeah.
Because that name was used in Rosemary's Baby.
It did cross my mind when I first heard it. So let's start where we always start. What genre is this?
Ooh. Let's see, what do they call it online?
Letterboxd says it's a thriller horror drama.
Ooh. Yeah, this is an odd one to kind of nail down. I would say I don't know, maybe thriller.
Are we on a suspense train now the new year?
Maybe.
So I said that last time.
It's drama.
Okay,
everything's a drama.
I'm going to throw some tags at you.
All right, do it.
So only for the show within the film, 60 Minutes Before Midnight, that whole part is very like mockumentary feeling to it.
Yes.
It made me super think of Ghostwatch.
Oh yeah,
I know you've brought up a lot before.
It's very good.
Yeah.
I was going to bring that up anyway. So.
And then also a political thriller.
Yeah.
Because we have this whole like the president's corrupt, the government's corrupt. There's this weird like
conspiracy going
mega
on.
corporation that's backing them, and there's weird stuff going on.
Yeah. And these people are trying to get to the bottom of it.
Right, they want to uncover the truth, and they don't know what the truth is, and there's several different theories and ideas.
Yeah, because even at one point in the background of a news broadcast, there's posters for all the president's men. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it's a political thriller. That's good.
Which is cool. I quite like those. It's not a thing I seek out all the time, but when done well, I like.
Oh, absolutely. Horror, I suppose.
There were some good like horror moments, I think, in this film. We'll get to it.
We'll
as
get
we
into that.
Go through.
We'll get into that.
Perhaps I like them more than you. I suspect. Okay.
And it's an occult film. I don't know if that's a subgenre of its own. I think it is.
Yeah, when you're focusing on like the act of practicing magic and stuff.
Everything,
yeah.
It is in black and white. It is mostly in black and white. There's a few color segments. It's mostly shot in 4:3, which nicely matches the time it's set in, because it's set in like 87, I think.
I believe
it is.
so, yeah.
And also because a lot of it is the actual TV broadcast.
Which is how that would have been presented.
Exactly. So.
See, when I first started it, I thought there was something wrong with Screambox.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, actually, I have a question, because I don't know if it looked like this with yours, but some of the credits were cut off.
Yes, it did.
Yeah, so I wonder if it was shot in a wider aspect ratio and then just cropped down to 4:3.
I don't know.
Or if that was just some sort of a title mistake they had made,
Or it could be intentional.
Could be
It
intentional.
actually threw me off at first, and I was like, is this supposed to be in full frame, or is Screambox like really weird, or what's going on here?
Yeah.
And then as I got into it more, I was like, oh, okay, this is intentional. Mm-hmm. Especially because, and again, we'll get into it, but they start to play with the aspect ratio of the film.
They do.
Which is super cool.
Mm-hmm. It was directed and written by Cristian Ponce, I think is how you pronounce his name.
Sure.
Apologies if I'm incorrect. And
Yeah.
this one's kind of been flying under the radar too, I think. Like I couldn't find a whole lot about it. I saw some reviews here and there, but not a lot of people have talked about it. And there could be a very good reason for that.
We do want to talk about the director really quick. He's also made an animated series called The Curlian Frequency.
I read about that. That sounds interesting.
In Argentina, it had a domestic release through Netflix. Mm-hmm. I don't know overseas if we're wanting to get at it where we go for that. I couldn't dig up much on it, but it sounds so cool. It's like this animated series, and it's very inspired by the idea of like midnight radio shows, stuff like Coast to Coast, but then also like weird small town but supernatural stuff is going on kind of things, like Gravity Falls, or you go back to when I was a kid and there was stuff like Erie, Indiana.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I read it. It's kind of a mix between like Stephen King and H.P. Lovecraft.
Yeah.
Sort of.
I looked up some clips. I'll put a few in the show notes too, but like, yeah, it seemed real cool.
Cool. I mean, it could be a good reason to get a VPN and get a Netflix account overseas. So.
Yeah. NordVPN, ExpressVPN, whoever wants to throw down those dollars. Okay, so maybe before we go through the film, let me talk about the licensing stuff. So,
okay.
Obviously, this was a film that got made, and then they put it out there. Initially, Netflix grabbed the rights for the film in Spain and all of Latin America, and HBO Max got all the rights for Central Europe. So that, like, immediately out of the gate,
They didn't think Americans wanted it?
when they first screened it, that was like the first like snap ups. Eurozoom took all the French rights and planned for it to actually have a full on theatrical release. I think like early 2022. Yeah, 2022. Then this company called Film Sharks got the worldwide and remake rights to the picture. And in an interview, they had stated that there was a major U.S. genre producer who was eyeing it to do an American-style remake. And so this came up a little bit when I was doing my whole like stint in film journalism there for that year, because I actually kept hearing rumors that like you could go in other places and it was already streaming. You could go to Netflix in Spain and there it's boom, it's right on there. But in the U.S. it was nowhere. And of course, this is all unsubstantiated. There's no source, no one to cite. But it was just I kept hearing people say like, "Oh, it's being held back because of this remake because they want the American remake to come out first."
It wouldn't be the first time.
Yeah.
Those horrible bastards and Weinsteins were notorious for that sort of thing.
Especially when we had the whole like J-horror boom off The Ring and stuff like that. They were just desperate to grab whatever.
Yep, just sat on it.
And then usually like when it hit theaters, you would get like a crappy DVD release of the original film. If you cared. And so it sat for forever and never came out. Never any more news about this remake. Never any info about a streaming release or any kind of release for the film in English in America. And then, out of nowhere, the streaming company Cinedigm. I guess that's how you say their name. Sure, why not?
Sounds good.
They got the North American rights to it. And then right at the end of last year, kind of around in December, they announced that it was going to go to Screambox, which is, I guess, Bloody Disgusting's streaming platform. And then, boom, it just kind of plopped onto Screambox unceremoniously without a lot of buzz, really.
Yeah, not much fanfare.
I just noticed it by chance that it was out there and we could get at it finally.
Well, it was fortuitous for us.
Yes. Weird little history for a film from 2022 of...
It's almost like someone doesn't want this to be seen, or they're trying to erase it from history or something like that.
Interesting.
Okay, now this movie is a little convoluted.
We're going to jump around a lot because there's two major plot lines running concurrently that they flip-flop between.
Right. And this is a hard one, I think, to kind of recount. But we'll do our best.
We shall try.
Well, it starts with kind of a broadcast, a little bit of the show, 60 Minutes Before Midnight, which is a great title.
Love the title. I love their theme song, too.
Yeah, I was going to say the music's great. It's very much like those old 80s investigative type shows.
Hard-hitting, going to give you the truth.
Yeah, but this show is a Argentinian investigative live broadcast. And there's a little bit of background given here about the president of Argentina, Velasco.
Yes.
We found into the years 87, and there's a lot of political unrest. Apparently, he has done some unpopular decrees, something about economics and all that, and people aren't happy about it.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk of corruption. And so once they set that up, then it's when we kind of get the other plot, right, with the producers.
Yeah, because there's the TV broadcast, which is shown, live, and the characters of the movie actually watch a lot of it. And then there's the actual kind of movie beyond just the broadcast itself happening at the same time. Yeah.
So it's four individuals. It's Maria, Alfredo, Federici, and Lucio, I believe.
Yes.
And they're essentially the producers of the show. And then is it... the host, his name is... Alfredo, yes. So he's the host, and he's the one actually doing the show. The producers are gathered at what appears to just be a random house somewhere. Like they're hiding out.
Yeah.
They've got papers spread out everywhere, and like a map of the city, and all this crazy stuff. And I think before we get there, we start with actually Federici.
Yeah, Federici meets some mysterious guy, some well-dressed guy, and gets a package from someone named Van Merkin.
And we're led to believe that some wealthy individual that has some big company branded out of their name.
And later on, when we're shown the broadcasts, it's sponsored by the Van Merkin Laboratory.
And one of the things Alfredo says is that in the course of doing the last, like, so many episodes they've done about the president, they've lost all their sponsors.
Yeah.
And it basically sets up that this is their last show, they're being canceled, but the Van Merkens Corporation basically funded this final episode so they could get their full airtime to finish the story.
So what they're doing is... Oh boy.
Well, it goes back to an inciting... The start of this actual, like, quote-unquote broadcast is kind of a recap of the last few episodes that's led to this point.
True.
Because it was one inciting event that happened that then led them to investigate all of this stuff. And the inciting event was there was this security guard, and he was doing like his whole night watchman thing, just wandering around peacefully, checking everything out, making sure everything's good, and he stumbles across a murder. Or seemingly a murder.
Yeah, we see like a well-dressed man standing over a body. And,
See, I thought it was just people LARPing Mage of the Ascension, but, you know.
It could have been. Who knows? It was totally innocent.
Yes, but notably, the guy that seems to be imperiling the unconscious individual vanishes into thin air.
Yeah, right before the security guard's eyes. But he leaves behind a notebook.
Yes. And that notebook got turned into the production company, and it seemed to link a bunch of political figures, including Belasco, in some sort of weird connotation. And so the whole point of this like series they've been doing is to run down all those connections, find out what it means, and how these people are connected.
Yes. And we also learned that at midnight, there's going to be like a rally.
Yeah, political rally in protest of the president.
So the 60 Minutes Midnight show starts at 11 o'clock, and it's going to end at midnight when this rally is supposed to begin.
Yeah.
And so the guests on the show are, let's see.
They have 3 for this final episode.
Yep, one named Senator Linares, whose name was mentioned in the notebook, and his phone number is in the notebook. A writer named Daniel Aguilera, who's written a book called Michelle Doesn't Remember Anything, which just by the title alone, you know is one of those satanic panic
Yeah, that's
books
such an
from the
80s, like, cult satanic panic.
The whole
title.
brainwashing thing. Yeah. And the third, probably most important guest, because the producers keep mentioning him, that he's kind of like the linchpin of the whole thing, is a man named Adrian Marcado, and he's the vice president of the Kingdom Corporate.
And he's played by Germán Bodino, who's a veteran actor for Argentina. He's been in films like Abracadabra, Los Olvidados from 2017, and Dia de los Muertos.
Okay. I liked him.
Which, I mean, you could tell he just exuded charisma as his character.
He was pretty good. And Mercado, like we mentioned before, was a name mentioned in Rosemary's Baby. It was the real name of Roman Cassavet, the elderly neighbor of Rosemary. And he, of course, was a devil worshiper.
Yeah, so that's a nice little like hint right out of the gate. And so for the producer side of things, they're kind of torn a little bit about what's going on, because I think it's Maria specifically. She doesn't want to accept the idea that there's this occult connection. She really wants there to just be this like normal, simple, like it's just corruption and money changing hands and diabolical stuff. But she's not ready to make that jump into the idea that there's, real occult activities going on.
But one of the producers, Abel, I think his name is.
Yeah.
He went to what they call one of the farms that Kingdom Corporate has.
Yeah.
Which I guess is like some sort of a cultish retreat type thing.
Yeah.
And they're never very specific. There's not a lot of specificity in this movie.
It made me think of like a Bohemian Grove kind of thing.
Yeah. But he's a believer. Like he has apparently
convinced.
seen things.
And he's too afraid to tell them everything that he saw.
Yeah.
And they have one more person on the side of the producers. It's Natalia. She's a young woman that's kind of their in the field person.
Yeah, they have her. She's supposed to go to some address at some point. So she keeps calling them from this really cool payphone.
Yeah, she's skulking outside, and there's this weird, like, retro future payphone.
Yeah.
And she checks in, like, every 15 minutes.
It's almost like a big pod that kind of
Yeah.
goes over the top of the person using the phone. It's neat.
Yeah, it made me think of Mamoru Oshii's The Red Spectacles, which is this weird, like, dystopian
I hadn't seen that yet.
Japanese film. But it has that same, like, it's the 80s, but also it's the future vibe to it.
Okay. So they kind of actually go down the points of what they're after with this final program.
Yep.
They're trying to prove that Mercado and Velasco founded the Kingdom Corporate together because they had apparently were college buddies or something like that. And that the notebook that was found links Kingdom Corporate to the Seaport Hitman and other politicians. They're wanting Mercado to confirm this so that there will be an investigation. And they say if they fails, they will go with von Merken's plan, which is something they don't really know about.
Right.
But it involves Natalia going to that address.
And retrieving something.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty sound. I mean, to say it's confusing, that's pretty good summation
It's
of
the
everything.
best rundown I can come up with, yeah. And I did watch this twice.
Oh, yeah?
I did, yes. The first time I just watched, and the second time I like made notes and stuff.
Oh, nice.
I don't normally do that.
Ooh. That dedication.
I
Wow.
barely pay attention most of the time. Also, the package that they get.
Yeah, we should talk about that first.
Yeah, he opens it up, and it's a bell opening it up. He's the believer one. There's an audio tape in there, and there's like some things wrapped in cloth. He unwraps it. It looks kind of like it's like a weed or a plant or something like that.
And it's funny because he takes his first, but then only later does he explain what they are.
Yeah.
Which it's a hallucinogenic, and part of von Merken's plan for them is that they have to take this, and under its influence, they will be able to interpret what Mercado says in a way that will give them the truth.
Right. And it turns out it's tannis root,
Yeah.
which is something fictional that, again, was created for Rosemary's Baby. So one of the first kind of spooky things that happens is that Maria's off like making coffee.
Yeah.
And she keeps hearing her name. And she thinks it's one of the other producers calling her.
It's a very like staccato repetition of her name too, where it's like Maria.
Yeah.
Maria.
So she goes in this room, but there's a tape recorder in there. But was there a tape in there? Could you see?
I couldn't see a tape.
From
no.
the way it looked like it may have been empty.
Yeah.
So it's like one of those big old, old-fashioned, tape recorders that you would see in the 80s all the time. But she kind of gets, the door slams.
Mm-hmm. And eventually they all sort of realize, and they're like, hey, so where's Maria?
Yeah.
What happened to her? And that's a bell goes to look for her, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And he goes down the hallway and he sees something in the hallway. It's like some glowing eyes. It's like some creature crouched there. You don't really see it very well. It's in the shadows. But then it's gone. And he hears Maria banging on the door, so she's locked in. He opens it, lets her out.
And I like this because this is before he's explained the Tannis root, too.
Right. Yeah, because he's already taken it at this point,
Yeah, but they reunite, and she kind of just excuses what happened, and all squad back up in front of the TV to keep watching.
Yeah. So on the program, Alfredo is who they keep calling the old man. And I got the impression he was like some old college professor of theirs or something.
Yeah.
But they're talking to the senator who they have on the show, one of the guests, about like some meeting that was written about. The person who wrote the notebook says that he had met with the senator, knew some things about him, but the senator's like, I don't remember any of that. I don't know this person. That's incorrect.
And Alfredo tries to kind of pin him on it, and he's like, well, how does he have your number? But Linares is really evasive, and he kind of is like, well, I'm a public figure. My number's out there. Anyone can go and get it. Him just having my number doesn't mean anything.
Mm-hmm. And Mercado actually comes to this guy's rescue in a way. He says, stop torturing this man, because he won't remember. He doesn't remember anything. He says that the senator was needed for one purpose and then erased.
Yeah. And I loved that moment because it was like, it flipped the whole situation on everything.
Right. Because Mercado starts talking about this daughter that he supposedly had, but the senator says, no, I only got $2.
And he says, well, of course you're not going to remember the other one. And this is when Daniel sort of starts interjecting into things, because he immediately calls out Mercado as like a hack
Yeah.
and a con man,
A cult leader.
and starts to shield his book a little bit. Which he straight up says, like, have you ever heard of the concept of the satanic panic? That's all this is. It's just hysteria being wrapped up and escalated.
Mm-hmm. And Mercado keeps asking the senator all these questions. The senator doesn't know the answers. And, where are we? He's like, Buenos Aires. Where's that? Argentina. Where is that? It's in the world. And he's like, no, we haven't been in Argentina for 4 years or something like that. Okay.
Very ominous.
Yeah, so the senator gets all pissed off and leaves, gets offended because of the whole daughter thing. Oh, and there's a commercial that comes on.
I love the commercial breaks.
Federici gets kind of enraptured over this because earlier he had mentioned there was this phrase in his head that he couldn't get out of his mind.
Yeah.
And he's not sure where it came from.
It just popped in there.
And that phrase is, the future is over. Mm-hmm. And that made me think a little bit of Prince of Darkness.
Yeah.
That transmission from the future.
Yeah, where they're trying to contact him.
Yeah. But there is a commercial that comes on, something about children, about how, like, some children's foundation or something like that. And it has a line that says, the future is over. So he's all kind of enraptured by that. And this isn't the first time that children will be kind of linked to this.
Uh-huh. Which, again, that goes hand in hand with the satanic panic and also weird, fucked up, seedy politician stuff.
I think it's around this point where Abel starts telling them all about the tannis fruit, about how they have to take it.
Immediately, Maria is like, no.
Yeah, she doesn't take it.
We planned all of this. We've set everything up, and then you want to get high. Well, we need to be paying attention.
But all the other guys do.
Because of course you do.
Of course. Mercado admits to being a warlock. Mm-hmm. Brujo.
Yep, he says he was initiated by his grandmother.
Yeah, age 7.
Which him describing it, too, is pretty creepy. He talks about how he just, like, walks in on her and she's naked and, like, full on doing a ritual and everything.
Yeah. Let's see. Oh, yeah. And also that the Kingdom Corporate was built on witchcraft.
Mm-hmm. Which he admits that he mentions that he stepped away. He left the corporation. He gave up his spot because he disagreed with the direction it was going.
Yeah, and he said he made the mistake of, like, introducing the dark arts to his friends.
Because he got into college, made some friends, and he thought it would be fun to kind of induct all of them and teach them all the same stuff that he knew. Mm-hmm. And that was where this idea of the Kingdom Corporation even came from. That they could, like, build a force that would let them impose their will on reality. Mm-hmm. Which is a very classic, like, dabbling in the occult motif.
It's a great beginning to a Call of Cthulhu scenario.
Oh, yeah.
And Federici's outside at one point.
Yeah, he goes take a smoke break.
And we see, like, a flash of red, and it's actual red color, which looks pretty cool with the black and white, like, on his face.
I dug this so much.
Yeah. And he looks down, it's like there's, like, a bit of red light coming out of the wall.
Like a hole in the wall.
Yeah,
almost.
And he kind of starts peeling at it, and it gets brighter and brighter, and then it just disappears, and the wall is, like, whole again.
And that's why I like this Tannis root angle, because the entire time, you're now locked into a thing where it's like, well...
What is real?
What's real? What isn't? Is this really happening, or is this just part of the trip? Mm-hmm. And to me, that really helps, like, tease out the mystery further.
Mm-hmm. And Federici also comes in and asks Maria how many children the objects of their investigation has.
Yep.
And he's, like, checking it against her records, and she gets it right. And this comes into play later.
And there's a judge we should mention. It's their contact that they're trying to get to prosecute all this. And Maria is related to him.
Yeah,
that's been their link.
Right?
But he's, like, kind of estranged now because her kicking all this up is, like, looking bad on him.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. Oh, Abel tries to call into the show to ask a question on air.
Yeah.
But he gets disconnected. But then a woman comes on instead. And asks Mercado if he knows that they fuck his daughter in every way, in every hole.
Yeah.
So they cut her off pretty quickly. Mercado seems kind of nonplussed. I mean, he says that was a demon speaking. Mm-hmm. Okay.
And then you're still wondering, like, is he just...
is he full of shit?
Ultimate con man, or is this for real?
Yeah. And Abel sees a flash of Mercado on screen. He looks like some kind of monster. Mm-hmm. Like almost like he's been, like, charred or something.
Yeah, it made me think of like it was a recent horror movie. Is it We Are Still Here? The one with Barbara Crampton, and they have like the charred demonic ghosts and stuff.
I love that flick. That's a great movie.
Such a good visual.
Mm-hmm. And then he flashes back to normal. So again, is this the Tannis root? Is he seeing the truth, or is it like some sort of illusion?
We get a call in with Natalia where she mentions that she's seen the same man kind of passing around a bunch. They worry that maybe they're onto them and someone's gonna attack her. Mm-hmm. Which they've mentioned earlier that she does have a gun on her if she really needs it. Interesting little red herring that doesn't really go anywhere because later she calls back and it turns out it was just a dude there to pick up a girl.
Yeah. False alarm. Mercado says that the world's about to die. Mm-hmm. And Daniel, the skeptical writer, asks Mercado to prove that he's a warlock. And Mercado kind of makes this gesture, and then Daniel starts bleeding from his nose, I think it is. Mm-hmm. But then he's like grabbing his face, and it looks like blood's coming out of his eyes and stuff. Of course, they cut away quickly from that. And
they have an interesting exchange before the spell part happens, where when he first asks for him to prove it, the first thing Mercado says is like, "Oh, I could read you like a book."
Yeah.
And he kind of rattles off a few things, and at first it's like he's like, "Well, anyone could guess some of that stuff." And then he gets a little closer to home, and that's when he sort of challenges him to like, prove it, show me.
Right. So he does.
Which leads to Daniel leaving the show as well.
And that scene reminded me a lot of Curse of the Demon.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, when the sorcerer in that movie summons the cyclone to prove that he actually is a magician. God, I love that movie. Great if you haven't seen Curse of the Demon, watch Curse of the Demon. So good.
Good film to chase this one with.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. Yeah, then Alfredo comes back on the TV, the announcer, and he says that Daniel's been taken to the hospital, and he's going to be fine. And you see his collar has blood on it, too.
Yeah. And at this point, he kind of just challenges Mercado to, come out and confirm
he says, questions. Yeah, what do you know about Belasco and the Warlocks?
But Mercado's still evasive.
Yeah, he keeps saying, I can't talk about that now. Like, I will later, but not now. I know that he does kind of relent here, and he's about to explain some stuff. But as he tries to do that, he's like opening up his mouth, but the audio cuts out.
Yep.
And then the screen just goes to static.
And they find out that they're off the air.
Yeah. They have power, but they're not transmitting.
So then there's a mad scramble to get them back on before the time runs out.
And Mercado at this point looks like he's kind of having a seizure.
Mm-hmm. Which he had said earlier that if he immediately confirmed what they wanted to know, he would be attacked for it.
Mm-hmm. And I think at this point, there's like really loud knocking on the door of the producer's house. And they all just kind of like turn off the lights and they hide. Okay, yeah, that's what I would do.
I mean, they're also high as fuck, so.
Yeah, true. Yeah, they just kind of.
Quiet, man.
Quiet, man, quiet. And the knocks eventually go away. They open up the door. Nobody's out there. This reminded me a lot of The Haunting.
Oh, yeah.
That one scene in The Haunting with the knocking on the door and they're in the room. Yeah. If you haven't seen the original Haunting from 1963, go watch The Haunting.
Subtle but effective.
So good. And at this point, Maria finally takes the Tannis route.
Mm-hmm. Everything's gone to hell, so why not at this point?
Mm-hmm. Which is interesting because she didn't have the route, but she heard the knocking.
Right.
So you never know what really is real and what isn't.
But then true, you've got this backdrop of like there's this political rally that's about to happen. So how many people are like out in the streets just going around doing whatever?
True. This part, okay, then it gets really weird for me.
Yeah, here's where it gets trippier.
Because they kind of go into a trance.
Mm-hmm.
They play that tape that was in the package.
Right. Von Merkin sent them a tape to listen to once they were all under the influence of the Tannis root.
Annabelle, who went to that farm, who apparently has some magical knowledge, kind of puts them into this trance. Federici has kind of like a cool psychedelic red tinged vision.
Yeah, I liked his the best.
It'd be a really cool album cover. Then there's that scene with Maria, which is, okay, I'm still not exactly sure what's happening here. But this is where the aspect ratio changes.
Yes.
It opens up. And it's in color, too, is it not? Mm-hmm. Yes. Who is the guy with the beard? Do we know who that is?
I don't think so.
That's never explained.
No.
But he seems to be like almost in charge.
Mm-hmm. Maybe that's Belasco.
Oh, Belasco's the president.
We don't ever see him, do we?
We see pictures of Belasco.
Oh, yeah.
He's like an older dude.
Right. Mm.
I don't think it's Von Merkins either. But yeah, he's almost like giving them orders and stuff. And there's a scene where they're all talking about, they're kind of like going over the plan, because this is obviously like a few days before the broadcast. And Federici asks, he says, "Where's Abel?" And Maria says, "Who?"
Yeah, like she doesn't know who he is.
Yeah. So, all through the movie, we've been getting these little hints that things are changing.
I don't know why it just clicked with me. Well, we have to finish talking about the movie before I can tell you what I think about this scene. So we'll keep going.
Okay.
I had a thought about this, and it just suddenly came back to me.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right. Throughout the movie, things seem to have changed here and there. Like little things that used to be true are no longer true.
And they keep going back to that count of the children. That's like a key thing they keep focusing on.
Yeah. Let's see. Oh, and while they're doing this, like, Abel answers a phone call while everyone else is in a trance. And over the phone, it just says Warlock over and over. The door opens, a red light is shining in on him. And then we see that he's wearing like some sort of grass stalk mask or something.
Yeah, it's crazy looking.
Children of the Corn thing going on here. And there's this tentacle coming through the door. And then that scene just ends.
Yeah, when that happened, I was like, dude, we're going full Lovecraftian. Oh, shit.
Yeah. Let's see. Okay, then Federici wakes up. Abel is on the floor.
Yeah.
Maria is bleeding and holding a knife. She says that Abel's a warlock and killed Lucio and attacked her.
Yep. And
So
it
she had
turns
to kill
out
him.
that when he went to the farms, they flipped him. He was working for the other side. And that this was all a setup to try to get them and take him out.
Okay, if you say so.
What can Federici do at this point but choose to believe?
True. Yeah. Maybe that tentacle had something to do with it. I don't know.
And so
They mentioned that Natalia hasn't called back.
Right.
And then we kind of cut to her. And we see her being followed in the streets. And it seems to be that well-dressed man from the beginning, the one that disappeared.
The dockside hitman.
Yeah. He's saying that the professor has sent him, but she's like hiding from him. And he does one of those things where she turns around and bam, he's there. You know, fucker's teleporting or whatever. He kind of makes another gesture, kind of like the same sort of spell thing that Mercado did. Makes her start bleeding from the nose. But she turns and shoots him with the aforementioned gun. And we see his body on the ground. I'm not sure if he's dead or not. And then there's a scene where Federici's asking Maria again about the number of children, but that's changed.
Right, it's different now.
What she knows is different than what was on the paper. And he's saying that at midnight they're going to take more children.
Yep. It seems that whatever they're doing, it's some sort of ritual that involves using children, of course.
Then we go back to Natalia. She calls back. She's at that address. She goes into this house.
Yeah, they tell her there's no other option now. She has to go in there.
Yeah. And there's a box. She opens it up. We don't see what's in it. But she reaches in.
And they tell her she has to rush it to the studio if they can get back on air in time.
Natalia calls and says she's heading to the studio. Like she's I think she says on a cab. And Federici's confused. He's like, on a cab. Because I didn't catch that. I didn't catch that at first, I admit.
Yeah, I thought that was clever.
Yeah.
Because your first reaction watching it is like, well, yeah, of course she's in a cab. Why wouldn't you be?
Yeah, but how could she be talking to him if she's in a cab in 1987? At least not without one of, Landa's big brick phones.
Yeah, she didn't have the big honking brick phone.
The show's back on.
They have barely, 10 minutes left or something?
Yeah. And Mercado keeps saying things like it's going to get worse and then everything will start over. Natalia comes into the studio.
Yeah, she charges right in.
And she has a cell phone. It looks like, a freaking iPhone or something.
Modern day cell phone, yeah.
Yeah. And Mercado takes it. And he talks to his daughter, I believe he's speaking with. And he's telling her to go through his papers and find a particular one. And in so many seconds, read the word that's written on the paper.
And meanwhile, Alfredo was just like begging him, please, please confirm this before we go off the air.
Yeah.
And then he tells him, I'm going to do something better than confirm it.
Yeah. And Natalia is kind of backing up in the back of the studio. Interestingly, she has her ears covered. Mm-hmm. And he begins to say something. And you hear, I think it's like K-A or the first syllable. And then it goes off the air.
Yep.
Then we hear gunshots outside the producer's house. So apparently all hell's breaking loose out there.
The cacophony of the political rally.
Then we cut back to the studio, and it's in color this time. Mm-hmm. I think the aspect ratio is the same, isn't it?
At first, yeah.
Ricardo's gone, and it looks like there's a little smoke there where he was. Mm-hmm. And Alfredo is asking anyone if they heard what he had said.
Yeah.
Mercado. And his hands look like they're kind of vibrating.
Yeah, he looks spooked.
Yeah. And he's looking down and he's asking if anyone can see it.
Yeah.
And then we push in on Natalia, who's just sort of like looking around. Confusion, I guess is the expression. Not really horror.
It's like they're noticing the fact it's color for the first time.
Yeah. And then it ends. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Nice, ambiguous ending.
Okay, that's one of my criticisms. I think the whole movie is a little too ambiguous.
Oh yeah, really?
I do. You know me, I like a little bit of mystery. I don't need everything explained or wrapped up in a nice tidy package. But I kind of find this a bit too ambiguous. But maybe we can work through it.
Okay, well let's back up to the extra fourth man that we were talking about earlier.
Okay.
I got confused at first when you were describing that scene, and then it just clicked with me. So I think that fourth person was one of their producers, and they altered reality to make a Bell take his place so that he was inside with them. And they had an inside man to like prevent them from
since it was, who was it, Federici? Since it was his like vision under the Tannis root and everything, he remembered a Bell. Because it really wasn't, yeah, okay.
Yeah. That was my interpretation.
Could be.
Now, is that true? I don't know.
Right, yeah.
And I think that's one of the strengths of the film is it leaves it open. I could be right. I could be totally wrong. Mm-hmm. Someone else could have a whole different interpretation.
Yeah, it's not a bad theory. But that's what I mean by being too ambiguous, perhaps.
Oh, I like that, though. I like to just ponder the options.
Sure, but there has to be some...
Because if you remember, that was my one criticism of Come True. I was like, it needed to be a little vaguer.
I agree at the end. It could have been a bit more vague. True. But for that movie, there was also more of a narrative I was hooked on. I have issues with this movie.
Oh, you don't like the whole, like, expose the president narrative thing?
I really love the basic story. I think is pretty fucking cool. I'm just not... For me, I'm not invested enough in the characters to care too much. And the goings-on are so ambiguous. I feel like I can't really latch onto anything. You know, I got no emotional connection. Mm-hmm. It's never really a scary movie.
No, I don't think it's really meant to be either.
No. It's just a little too vague.
Fascinating.
I've been reading reviews of this, and a lot of people are praising it. They say it's a great movie. Mm-hmm. Other people are like, it's fine.
So here's one thing I'll say, because I was thinking a lot about this. I don't know a lot about the history of Argentina, so I wonder if some of that context might make this like ring a little more.
I think it has a lot to do with it, yes, because I was watching one video, and they were talking about how there was a pretty terrible regime in the 80s that, of course, the Americans put in power.
You're welcome.
Sorry, half the world.
We're so sorry.
But there was a lot of corruption, you know, and apparently a lot of people just disappeared. I'm sure political enemies just vanished. And a lot of those were children. I don't want to know what happened to them. God, that's horrible implications.
Well, if you have no morals and you want leverage on a person, yeah, there you go. But see, I think a lot of this is like almost universal in a way, because if you take from what we know, which is, of course, American politics, number one, we've had weird stints of like, is it supernatural or what's going on? Like, again, like Bohemian Grove, that whole thing. Mm-hmm. Is it just a bunch of rich dudes going out on a retreat or what? You know, that's... legitimate thing that people have spent many hours discussing and debating.
Sure. You can say it with like almost any Lynch film too.
Yeah.
But Lynch always gives you a bit more than this movie did for me.
And then the other thing I thought about too, it's really early in the film. It's when they're first talking about Belasco before the show has started, and they're wondering like, will this work? Will this do anything? Will this change anything? And one of the producers, I forget which one, they say, well, it doesn't really matter. Have you seen the polls? Belasco's trending really poorly. There's no way he could be elected again. Mm-hmm. And that made me think about recent presidential elections here in America, where people said similar things like, "There's no way this could happen,"
and then it does.
Yeah.
Or doesn't.
And that's that same thing as then you're looking for the answer of like, well, how does this happen? Mm-hmm. And then this film...
Obviously, the election was stolen. That's what you're saying, right, Dustin?
And then this film, of course, is in a fictional way filling that gap with this idea of the supernatural.
Yeah.
Which I thought was interesting and compelling.
Like I say, the basic story is very interesting. Mm-hmm. And honestly, this isn't a movie I would mind seeing remade. Oh. To be honest with you.
So what would you like changed if that American remake did happen?
I need more connection with the characters. Mm-hmm. The characters are they're blank canvases. They really are. So there's so many of them. We don't really get any attention from any. I just don't feel any connection to.
If I'm interpreting what you're saying that the film needs to be longer.
Oh God, maybe it does. And that's not always a bad thing. Long movies can be great. Mm-hmm. But I think it keeps me at arm's length. This movie. So as a interesting little kind of puzzle or thought experiment. It's fun. I mean, it's well made.
Oh, it's very well made. And I love the whole idea. Anytime it's a black and white film and then they introduce color, and that color means something to what's going on, I love stuff like that.
Yeah, me too.
And then this one, too, with the aspect ratios, I don't know that I've seen that used too often. Usually it's very distinct. Like, it'll be like, here's the TV show, and it's this ratio.
Right. It was used to pretty good effect in Censor. I don't know if you ever saw that one or not.
I've seen clips of it. I've not seen the whole thing.
Yeah, that's the one about, like, at the beginning of the third act, because it's widescreen, it slowly begins to come in and do... You don't even notice it until it's, like, halfway there. And you're like, wait, what the fuck? But I watched a YouTube video. Maybe we could find that and link that in the show notes.
Yeah, you can just let me know.
Because someone pointed out that there's a tourism ad for the Falklands in this movie. But at the time that in 87, Argentina didn't have the Falklands. It belonged to the British. I mean, there's a whole war fought over it. But in here, it's like, go to the Falklands.
Yeah.
But they wouldn't have that because it belonged to the UK. So they're positing that perhaps this is an alternate reality. Like, things were already changed. And if you live in Argentina or if you know more of their history, you would get that. You would crock onto that pretty quickly. And that's fun. That's like almost an in-universe playing with the whole time change thing.
So, too, I guess to talk about it, what do you think was going on behind the scenes with everything? What's your interpretation of that?
We don't get much to go on.
We do not.
And that's one of my problems. I think it's a little too vague. I really do.
I was getting those David Lynch vibes, man, so I was into it.
Lynch always gives you something more.
Well, Twin Peaks: The Return, you're pretty out there flying in the wind.
This is a well-made movie, but it does not compare to Lynch's compositions.
Oh, I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying it's got those vibes.
It does.
And I was feeling it.
It does. But like with Lynch can like use that feeling of unease and disassociation to just lull you into this wonderful, beautiful trance. This one just kind of aggravated me. Actually, honestly, the second time I watched it, I was getting pissed off. I really was. I was getting pissed off. Which is something because the movie should elicit some sort of a reaction.
I agree. Even if negative, it did its job.
Yeah. I find it just frustrating because I feel like it could be... I think it's a few drafts away from being an excellent film. I mean, that's my opinion. Well, what's yours? I've been talking too much.
Oh, I'm interested to hear what you think. So, to talking about the ending first real quick. So I think part of this ritual is it was like making an alternate reality to put everyone in that was kind of this stasis where in that they had like complete control of things. So they were in political power, they were in control. And it was kind of this thing like they would have to like repeat the ritual every so often to renew it.
Okay.
And it was like a cycle where they were just like stuck in this.
Yeah. Or like maybe creating their whole new world, basically. Yeah. Okay.
So that was kind of my interpretation. But
Yeah, I mean, that's as good as any.
So some of my thoughts. Let's see. I think I've hit a lot of this out of my notes. Let's see here. I do think there's good pacing in this film too, especially when they use the 60 minutes before midnight as like the anchor. Because the whole time it's like they got to finish in the hour.
And there's that countdown clock, which is really clever.
Every time they go to the show, you see the clock counting down. You know how much time is left.
I do like that.
That really gets like to be a good political thriller. You have to have that tension and that push that like
the shoe's going to drop at some point.
Yeah, at any moment, and they execute it perfectly with this TV show. See, I already talked about the aspect ratios.
I actually wish it was almost all the TV show, kind of like Ghostwatch was.
Yeah,
like one continuous broadcast. Or maybe a preamble, like the first act is leading up to the broadcast. That's where we get the info dump. You know, we know what's happening, it's setting everything up, and then bam, we go into the broadcast. I think that would be a bit more compelling, personally, but I didn't write or direct the movie, so. Remake idea, though.
So yeah, I think like another thing on the ending too is like at the end there when he contacts his child, whatever they do on the other end is able to like break the spell, and that's why they're kind of released back into normal reality where there's color, where the aspect ratio shifts back, and that kind of stuff.
Could be. I also had the impression that perhaps Mercado escaped this reality.
Oh, and left the rest.
Like he just bamped to another dimension, which is, you know, there's the smoke and everything. Like maybe he just teleported or whatever, because he wanted his daughter to say the word too.
Right.
So she would go along with him.
Could be.
Or like you say, maybe they were saved from this, you know, time change.
But no, man, I really loved it. Like I love the tone. I love the theme. I love the back and forth between the two plots. Love the use of colors. Love the aspect ratio stuff. Nothing really put me off about this one. Like across the board, it was just like easy pitches right over the plate every time.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you didn't get that sense of frustration like I did.
No.
Which is, I mean, you know me. I like movies that are kind of vague, that leave some stuff to the imagination. You got to kind of think and work at. But,
see, that's why I expected you to like this one.
Yeah.
When I watched it, I turned to Tiffany. I was like, "Oh, this is great. Jason's gonna love it too."
No, I didn't hate it. I didn't by any means hate it.
Yeah.
But it just, I needed more. I needed a little more meat to grab onto. That sounded dirtier than I wanted it to.
Well, Michael's not here to call you on it, so.
But yeah, I just needed a little bit more story. So I think this could have benefited from being a little bit longer. Another 20 minutes of character work or background.
I still think I'm in the alternate reality right now, man. 'Cause everything you're saying is the opposite of what you usually say.
The movie casts a spell on us.
So if you had to rate this one,
which I do,
which you do right now, as I'm staring you down,
I have been going all over the board on this one. I think shit. I'm gonna land at 2.5.
What?
Yeah.
What?
I've been going between 2 to 3. So I'm just going to split it down the middle at 2.5.
Okay, wow.
I wanted more. You know, I wasn't satisfied. I didn't feel a connection. Like, stylistically, it's cool. You know, technically, it's well made. I just needed more. I just didn't care. That was my biggest problem.
Wow.
Yeah, like I wasn't intrigued enough by the mystery because I didn't care about the characters, and half the time I was a bit confused. This is one of those movies you've got to kind of rewatch or think about a lot, or maybe it was just me. Maybe I was just slow on the uptake. I don't know.
See, man, I was in like right out of the gate.
Okay, I didn't have that connection. I needed to make this a really good movie. How about you?
Well, let me weight our average a little better by saying I don't think there's anything to add. I've kind of doled it all out along the way. I'm a hard line on a 5-star at this one.
Really?
I really liked it. I think it was super clever, super well executed, well done, well made. I want to see more from this filmmaker. I hope he gets more opportunities, especially since they were looking at doing a remake. Man, some studio, go throw him some money. See what he does.
No, I'm not against that. Just work on the script a little bit more.
Okay. Don't worry. If he goes to Hollywood, they'll make sure.
That's true. Wow. Okay, that's 2 5-star movies for you back to back.
Fuck yeah! Starting the year strong.
Yeah. No pressure or anything.
We have one more topic to settle though before we wrap up.
Okay.
We need to talk about Screambox.
Okay.
I teased we would review Screambox as a service.
I haven't got... Well, I went through the catalog a little bit.
Uh-huh.
Okay, what were your thoughts?
Catalog's pretty slim. I'm going to be honest.
It's a little underwhelming.
It's a little underwhelming. A lot of it's if you've already got Shudder or the Arrow player or
Tubi for that matter.
A lot of it's already on there. There's a very thin line of exclusives, one of which is this film, History of the Occult.
Yeah. And now they may build their catalog over time. Shudder didn't start as good as it is now.
Especially if they kill Shudder. Woo.
Don't kill Shudder. Leave Shudder alone. I noticed there was a lot more like low budget type movies on Screambox, but let's face it, most of that's trash. I'm sure there are some diamonds in the rough, but it's a lot of direct to streaming type crap.
And a lot of what they do have, I think it's the same like suites of catalogs they kind of vend to the same places too.
Yeah.
That said, it was easy to navigate. I didn't have any like problems accessing it or playing it.
So they got the whole 7-day trial thing, so go check it out for yourself.
What is it, like $5 a month? I think if you want to
keep it Shudder. Yeah. But right, I think if you have Shudder, there's really no need to get this, except for those Screambox. Like Terrifier 2 is on Screambox. Yeah. It's an exclusive there.
Probably gonna watch that before the trial expires. I'll be honest.
Yeah, no, you should. Yeah. It's great. So, we'll see.
It's all right. It could go places. I mean, it's got Bloody Disgusting behind it, so...
Right.
For a while, Bloody Disgusting was kind of backing and making their own films, so I don't know if they're still active on that or not, but if they are, if they have their own exclusive platform to kind of serve those...
Yeah, obviously that's where it's going to go.
Yeah.
Right. So we'll see. Keep an eye on that.
Yep. Worth the trial. Do you keep it or not? I think if you've got any other streaming horror-related service that you're in on, probably don't need it, but, do as you will.
Yep. Maybe you're a streaming completist, like Dustin is a Blu-ray completist.
Yes.
I must have all the horror streaming channels.
In the words of the grand occultist, Aleister Crowley, do what thou wilt, shall be the whole of the law.
Nice.
All right, well, that brings us to the end on this film. Thank you, Urban Groucho, for suggesting this one.
Yeah, thanks, man. Sorry I didn't enjoy it as much.
Hey, we're honest. We got to be honest.
I got to be honest. That's right.
Was fun. Glad to check it out. Finally, I've been anticipating it for a long time. I'm personally very pleased with it. You're where you are. It's cool. I still love you, man.
I wonder what Michael would have thought.
I know he said he would watch some of the stuff we cover still. I really want to talk to him about this one.
I think he would agree with me.
Probably, yeah. If it's weird and out there, I'm usually the person that stands alone on it. So, so that brings us to my freestyle pick. And speaking of weird, kind of trippy, kind of out there movies, having this film's good because it's kind of a connecting point lead into one of mine that I really wanted to cover. And I've been waiting and waiting and waiting, trying to find the right time. And I've never found the time, so here we are. Gonna do it now. We are gonna check out from 2021, Ultrasound, directed by Rob Schroeder.
Nice. This has been on my list for a while.
If you've listened to the podcast faithfully, I have mentioned it many times and often suggested it and tried to upsell it. It was one of my watches when I got to go to Fantasia digitally that year and cover and review things. And it was honestly my favorite film that year, so...
Ooh.
Yeah, we'll get into it. It's crazy. It's so good.
I can't wait to tear it apart.
I'll throw it out first. I think it's very Lynchian.
Okay.
So we'll set that up too.
All right. Okay. How does one watch this movie?
So it's on Hulu, I believe.
Okay, nice.
Yeah, so pretty easy to get at.
Excellent.
So with all that said, thank you, Jason, for your time. It has been very fun. Love doing this show. Love hanging out with you.
Me too, man. Always a good time.
You have been listening to Genre Exposure. We thank you so much for tuning in with us, joining us. Keep sending us movie recommendations. We need more. We need all the movie recommendations. Send some weird ones. I want something crazy, something out there. Hit us up on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram. Send us an email at genreexposure@gmail.com. We love hearing what you've been watching, what you're digging, what you're checking out. That secretly fills up our watch list, even if we don't cover it on the show.
That's right.
Otherwise, you have been listening, I'm saying it a second time, to Genre Exposure.
Bye, everybody.
You're listening to the Prescribed Films Podcast Network, home to hundreds of hours of free podcast entertainment. The shows on this network all have a common goal, providing you with the best discussions about movies and other forms of entertainment media. The PFPN hopes to fill your earholes with audio joy. Visit our website with links to all the other amazing shows at www.thepfpn.com. Thanks for listening.